A decision that you make at just 1 minute into the game can completely win or lose you the game. Well, what decision is that, you ask? Which buff you choose to start sets the pace for the rest of the match and has massive lasting effects due to one large reason. It often completely determines which lane you'll be strong siding. Okay, so what exactly is strong siding? It essentially just refers to the lane that you'll be spending most of your time around. If you choose to start red, for example, it's going to be hard to gank on the same side of the map that you started on. If we try to go bot, we're going to end up losing our entire top side, and most of the time that just isn't a worthwhile trade. Because of this, you usually see routes that end up on the opposite side from where you start. You can clear out your camps on one side and then spend most of your time on the other part of the map. If your opponent tries to counter jungle you for that, then there's not a whole lot for them to get. This creates a dynamic throughout the entire game where it's extremely beneficial to try and get rid of some camps and then immediately go to the opposite side of the map if you want to make plays, meaning that you're usually going to spend around 75% or more of your time on one side in most games. You might be wondering, why does selecting your starting buff make you lose the whole game then? Wouldn't it just screw over your first gank if you made a bad choice? You can always just pick a new side to start spending your time on, right? Unfortunately, because camp timers are static, meaning they always take the same amount of time to respawn, if you clear camps in a line towards topside, they're going to also respawn in that same order. We can't just start at Gromp now and path down to reverse the way we're clearing and redefine our strong side without making a huge time sacrifice waiting for everything to spawn, which would risk falling behind for the whole game. Obviously, because of this, it's pretty important for the person you strong side to get ahead so that you aren't just wasting all of those resources. But how do you even pick which side to path towards, and then do you just gank that lane a couple times? And if they lose, was there nothing you can do? Your laner is just bad and it's GG? And aren't you just putting all your eggs in one basket? Those are questions that need longer answers, which we'll cover in just a moment. But I do want to mention that our jungle courses over at Skillcapped are world class, and that is why we offer a 5+ division rank up guarantee when actively using our service. Otherwise, you get your money back. So definitely check us out after this if you want to make the biggest possible gains before your end of season climb. There's no reason not to, as there's no risk. Anyways, getting back into the guide, let's recap the 3 common questions I mentioned earlier so I can address them one by one. First, do I just gank one lane a few times and pray? Second, am I not just putting all my trust into one laner that might just suck? And third, how do I even pick where to path? Let's start with the first. A very common misunderstanding among players is that a few successful ganks, or even kills, means that you won a lane for your laner. But this isn't true at all. Your job is not just to make your laner win, but instead guarantee that they cannot fail. Let's look at an example game that I recently recorded while playing in Plat Elo. It is very often that one gank is simply not enough for a laner to snowball off of, especially in low elo where your laners aren't good at pushing their advantages. You will have to make a conscious effort to guarantee that they don't drop their lead, and on top of this, you'll have to make an effort to go out of your way to even create that lead in the first place. Right off the start, my Jace has Ignite into Yorick's teleport, so even though he ends up killing him at level 1 through bush cheese, he's not going to be in a winning position unless he can get his recall off and heal back his missing health. To deal with this, I cannot afford to take a slower route, and that's a big mistake that I'm already avoiding here. I need to make sure my Jace can crash his wave, so I have to skip camps and just rush 3 with Gromp. Laners' lanes will not wait for you. You have to adjust pathing based on them, especially when you're very concerned about one person in particular winning. One would think that with this early help now, and with Yorick dying twice early, that I would be okay to just leave this lane alone. But that is not the case at all. You can actually see that after I run mid to gank, Yorick is actually up a level now on Jace. In addition to this, his wave will be slow pushing back to him, which makes it pretty difficult for Jace to actually fight with all of those minions. It's in a spot like these where you really want to go back to farm camps or just recall, but in order to guarantee that your strong side laner cannot possibly fail, you have to go back to create pressure. Without me, Yorick can actually fight Jace here, and then he wouldn't be able to hold this wave, meaning his lead would start slipping. It's worth noting that there are still plenty of situations later where Jace actually loses in his own 1v1 even with additional help, so you can see that it's not just me getting a good laner and getting lucky. I'm just actively going out of my way to make sure my laner doesn't lose his shutdown and throw the lead away. I still have to give him a lot of help in a lane that should be free. You can't just give 1, 2, or in this case even 4 or 5 kills and expect everything to be fine. In fact, it's more worrying now that Jace can potentially give shutdown gold away, meaning that I really have to guarantee things. After this fight, what would you look to do next? Go back to farming camps, take Rift Herald, or look to invade? Taking Rift is extremely tempting. However, it's incorrect. Once again, the highest priority becomes making sure my strong side lane cannot fail. Invading to at least ward is the correct answer. I can see that Jace is pushing top, so I need to make sure that he won't die here and throw his lead. If I do Herald, he's left completely unprotected from the enemy jungler. Sure enough, Graves is in the bush, and if I hadn't distracted him or looked to get this ward in the first place, my top laner would have died and thrown regardless of all that help that I gave him. I have to be completely relentless in pushing his advantage because I just can't trust him to play correctly. However, one of the benefits of constantly playing around a laner that you've made this strong is that you can turn around plays that otherwise look very losing. Being around someone that is just going to have a lot of items and usually a level lead tends to make your life easier as a jungler. Who would have guessed? Alright, now let's address the second question. Are you just putting all your eggs into one basket? Well, no. Laners are going to lose even though you help and help a lot. It happens. But this is the exact reason why we look for opportunities to help other lanes too. You can't exactly help everywhere all the time, and you definitely shouldn't try to. Splitting your attention everywhere is very inadvisable, as it's more likely that you just won't have any winning lanes at that point. But that doesn't mean that you don't help your other lanes at all. You just need to identify when it's most important and most convenient for you. This is where the concept of a weak side timer comes into play. After your initial clear and first gank, your camps will usually look something like this. The camp that you did first will still be down and respawning soon, and the camps that you did afterwards won't be up yet. In this case, I started Raptors and immediately went to Gromp, so Raptors are respawning and my Gromp is still down. In general, the best time to help your weak side is when your strong side camps aren't up yet. The main reason is due to the fact that you can't be counter jungled if camps just aren't there, and this gives us the best time to look to help other lanes. Of course, once our strong side camps respawn, we're going to be incentivized somewhat to go back there, but I do always try to make sure my weak side lane is safe before doing so. In another game, I full cleared towards bottom as Olaf, and I couldn't find any initial gank onto my strong side, so I just recalled and attempted to clear back down. However, you can see that my Sejuani is incredibly low and will have a wave that's slow pushing out from her tower. If she needs to push out this wave, I'll go. If Gwen just resets, then she'll all be fine, but it just looks like she wards here. So I can actually help. Gwen has a really hard time running away, especially without having Ghost or anything. So if they just start fighting now, just go. Of course here, just showing on the ward is enough to create pressure for my Sedge to start building her slow push, and Gwen has to back up. Because she disrespects, I'm able to easily just show up and make Sejuani's otherwise extremely difficult lane really easy, for very, very little time commitment. Just helping your weak side crash their wave, even if it doesn't result in a kill, is a very good use of your weak side timer, although you can see this play out slightly differently in the Jarvan game. In this one, you can see that I look to invade on this timer instead, primarily to prevent Graves from ganking and also to set up my vision. My pink ward placement is critical since it allows me to counter jungle camps while still accomplishing all of my goals. If I didn't have the ward, Graves could sneak by me and kill my bot lane while I'm taking his wolves. Once again, every time I choose to make a move on the map, the priority is always making sure that my laners just can't int. It also serves the double purpose of alerting me to Graves' location if he comes to prevent my next play, a dive off of the crashed wave. You're not always going to need to help your team crash waves or look for aggressive plays on your weak side like this, but if you are, this is the best time to do so. To show how little I actually spent on my weak side aside from this, just look at the first 10 minutes of this game. I never took my Krugs, not once. Of course, I'm not saying that Krugs are a never take or that they're always bad, but they are really far away from Jace, and I couldn't afford the time to use on them since it would leave my strong side too vulnerable. I did have weak side timers aside from just the first clear where I could look to do something on the other side, but I kept choosing to put my camps back in an order that would keep me on top side more often, mostly as an answer for the third question. knowing where to path to is an extremely difficult question to answer sometimes. There's not always even a correct answer, but you do need to form a game plan around a lane that you want to play to. In general, I tend to value a couple of things very highly. 1, how likely is it for my lane to get priority? 2, how volatile is the matchup? And 3, how likely is the gank to succeed? Priority and volatility in the lanes definitely requires a bit of game knowledge when it comes to laning matchups, but in the case of this Jarvan game, there are a few key reasons why I wanted to path towards top. Jace vs Yorick is a range versus melee matchup, and in most cases, the range champion is extremely favored to get early priority. This gives me a huge incentive to go towards this already, but additionally, the dynamic of how Jace operates as a champion and how we drafted influences this as well. Jace is a champion that tends to spike very early on into the game, and he excels before opponents start getting a lot of armor and health. After that, he falls off. Champions that are very strong early and fall off late, like Renekton, LeBlanc, Jace, and Draven, are all extremely good targets to strong side. If they don't get ahead, they aren't useful, so you better make sure they do something or you're going to have a very useless teammate. In addition to this, we drafted all AD besides our support, so that usefulness is going to run out much sooner than normal. Wait, you just mentioned Draven, but don't you have one of those on your team too? I'll let me from the past explain the last point. So in this game, obviously I have Jace against no flash top laner. That seems to be a really, really good place to go. I want to path towards bottom because Draven Vel'Koz is also super volatile. Everything in this game is volatile as hell, so really can't go wrong. I think just because of top having no flash, it's so easy to punish that I'm just going to start here. It seems like way too easy. This is why I say that there isn't always a correct answer. I could easily justify strong siding bottom here for a lot of similar reasons as top, but Yorick's lack of flash really pushes my decision over the edge. If you want a more in-depth explanation about how to make this incredibly hard decision, check out our Challenger Explains One Concept in 5 levels of difficulty, which goes over this idea in a lot of detail. And with that, you now have the basics to start to understand how to play around strong side and weak side laners. This concept is incredibly important when climbing up the ladder, and it will mean that there are a lot less games where you just have 3 losing lanes and can't play. All junglers know that that's the worst nightmare imaginable, but it should be much more rare if you master this. Alright, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about Skillcapped. We offer a 5-division rank up guarantee and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week with over 2,000 guides curated into over 270 courses. No one can compare. We've also sent challenger players into ELO hell over 1,100 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all your questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month to improve fast and get the rank you've always wanted. Link in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.